The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin has visited Russian forces in occupied areas of southern and eastern Ukraine. Putin is believed to have met with troops in the Ukrainian regions of Kherson and Luhansk. Moscow illegally annexed both regions in September 2022, despite only controlling parts of them. It was the Russian leader's second visit to Ukraine since his invasion last year. Monday's trip comes as Moscow braces for a long-anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive. And Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky has also been visiting troops on the front line in the eastern Donetsk region. Zelensky handed out medals to soldiers in the town of Avdiivka. The area has been the scene of intense fighting with Russian forces. Most residents have already been forced to flee the town. Repeated shelling has left much of it in ruins. Our correspondent, Emmanuel Shaz, is standing by for us in Kiev. Emma, visits to the front line by both the Ukrainian and Russian leaders, what sort of message are they sending?
Good evening, Terry. Well, first off, here from the Ukrainian perspective, there's a lot of questioning about the visit of President Vladimir Putin in occupied territory. There's a lot of people who are questioning whether or not it is really indeed the Russian president or one of his doppelganger. The signal there, of course, is of support to the Russian troops by their president at a time where, well, there's no major gains by the Russian army. He is said to have visited the region of Kherson, a region which has been shelled 57 times in the past 24 hours, whereas and the region of Luhansk, whereas President Volodymyr Zelensky has visited the city of Avdiivka, the front line there where you mentioned there has been heavy fighting for months there. He distributed medals to soldiers there. He also visited units, mechanized units, artillery units, Marines staying there. So, of course, a very strong signal from Kiev as well of support, a show of support from the president to his troops.
Now, Russian attacks are being reported in numerous locations in Ukraine. What can you tell us about those attacks?
Exactly. Well, day in, day out, we experience such attacks on Ukrainian soil. Here in the capital, in Kiev, it has been relatively quiet those past few weeks. But in the eastern part of the country, we have to keep in mind that civilians are at very high risk of being shelled. Today, this morning, the city of Kherson, the city center of Kherson, has been shelled. At least one missile, a C-300 missile hit sent to Central Market. There was one person who died, 9 people were injured. They are all being treated at a hospital, and it is a reminder that fighting is not only ongoing on the front line between the armies, but it also every day has consequences on civilians who are being shelled.
Emma, we've been hearing for months about a possible Ukrainian offensive happening in the spring. Many expected this to be happening already now in April. Are there any indications when a Ukrainian offensive might start, Emma?
Well, of course, it would be very difficult to predict what could happen, and especially when. And of course, the government is not giving any indication so as not to prepare the aggressor, which is Russia. This is a counteroffensive. Ukraine is defending its own territory. They're remaining very tight-lipped about it. We've heard that there's the Russian army trying to fortify. We've heard conflicting report of the Russian army trying to fortify its position around Kherson, when at the same time there have been testimonies of people there saying that actually the Russian army was preparing to retreat, so maybe there will be moves towards the southeastern parts of Ukraine, but no indication as to when this counteroffensive would start.
Emma, thank you very much. That was DW's Emmanuel Shaz in Kyiv.